After posting the last two carnivore related videos, the public in the comment sections especially were both very triggered and also very concerned about my well-being, kind of. One of the prominent ideas in the comment section was, Rob, adding carbs to a carnivore diet, you will get sick because of the Randle cycle. And in today's video, I'm gonna directly address the Randle cycle. I'm gonna address the problems with the Randle cycle theory in general. I'm gonna let you guys know and outline the reasons why the Randle cycle has not affected me yet, or probably never will, because there's definite reasons. I'm also gonna go over how the Randle cycle actually can affect people and why, and what it has done to some of my clients. So today's video is gonna be about me adding carbs to the carnivore diet and why the Randle cycle has not negatively affected me at all yet. So first things first, I'm gonna jump right into why the Randle cycle is having zero effect on me so far. And what you see in the comments is a lot of people saying, just give it some time. The Randle cycle is gonna catch up to you. And I guess for those of you who don't know what the Randle cycle is, it's basically when you have too much fat and too many carbohydrates in the diet at the same time, it can cause major issues. That's what the theory says. The theory basically says that doing too much fat and too much carbs together creates gut biome issues, oxidation on a cellular level. It can result in bad skin, hormone issues, bad sleep, a host of metabolic and digestion and overall health related issues. Now, why has the Randle effect not had any negative impact on me as of right now? And I've been doing carbs with my carnivore and animal-based diet for 2 years. So after 2 years, the Randle cycle should have kicked in. And just to let you know, right now, my health, I'm 44 years old. I sleep great. My digestion is on point. My hormones and testosterone are very high for my age group. I'm physically fit. I'm 5'10 and a half, 5'11", 183 pounds. I have a six pack. I'm muscular. Like I said, I sleep good. My digestion is on point. So none of the symptoms from the Randle cycle are happening. Why is that? A few reasons. Reason number one, I'm not eating super elevated fat and carbohydrates in my diet at the same time. You see, on a typical week with my animal-based or carnivore diet, I have days where I have 0 carbs, strictly carnivore, no plant foods, no fruit, no honey, no carbs of any kind at all, 0 carbs. On those days, I eat probably more fat, more fatty cuts, ribeyes, I add more butter to my food, and I'm strictly carnivore. So there is no Randle cycle happening on those days because there's no carbohydrates in the diet to make it happen. Then I have several days per week where I eat some carbs, like maybe around 50 grams, maybe a piece of fruit, maybe a little honey in my raw milk, excuse me. But the carbs are very limited. So there probably isn't enough carbs in the diet combined with the fat to elicit the Randle cycle. And then thirdly, a few times per week, I will have elevated carbs, like I showed in the adding carbs to the carnivore diet video, where I had somewhere around 279 carbs for the day, coming from fruit, coming from some raw honey, coming from some raw dairy. Now, if you look at the week, there's days with carbs, there's days with low carbs, and there's days with 0 carbs. And I've been using that cyclical carb cycling methodology for the entire 2 years that I've been experimenting with elevated carbs with an animal-based or a carnivore diet. So from that fact alone, even if the Randle cycle theory is completely dead on and true and works, I'm probably not eating enough fat and carbohydrates on a weekly basis to elicit the Randle cycle. The second part of the Randle cycle that is probably not happening is, overall, I probably do have enough glucose in my system, plus fat in my system, to, by the standards, create the Randle cycle. But one of the things that the Randle cycle doesn't really talk about or investigate or thoroughly dispute is energy balance and metabolic health and the types of activities that a human being does that utilize the sugars and the glucose and the fructose that they're eating. I do a lot of glycogen burning activities. I sprint, I do high intensity intervals. I also do super long hikes like I'm doing now. I do weightlifting and I play a little sport. Weightlifting really hard, running the sprints, playing certain sports destroys the glycogen. Also, when I have enough activity to basically burn through all the calories that I'm eating per day, there's not a lot of glycogen and carbohydrates floating around in my system to interact with the fat and cause issues anyway. Another issue with the Randle cycle theory is that they don't account for, in the theory, a set point of what actually is too many grams of fat and too many grams of carbs in the same diet at the same time to elicit the Randle cycle response. It could be different for different people. And as far as I'm concerned with my own data, and that's really all that matters is people's personal data, the Randle cycle hasn't happened at all. So it's probably due to several reasons. My protein is always high, so that limits the amount of fat and carbs I can have anyway. 2, I don't generally mix super high carb days and super high fat days on the same day. When I'm eating 0 carb, higher fat. When I'm eating moderate carb, less fat. When I'm eating higher carb days, my proteins are coming from leaner sources and I'm not using as much overt fats like grass-fed butter. So that's most likely why the Randle cycle is not doing anything negatively to my health and why adding carbs to my carnivore diet has worked really good so far for me. But I do want to talk about the possibilities of the Randle cycle, or what I like to call it, just having an imbalance in your diet, meaning too much fat and too much carbs, and what that actually can do. So I've worked with over 2,600 people in my career. My career has been going on for over a decade. For those of you who don't know, I specialize in helping people heal eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, and rosacea, immune health issues, hormone issues. And I personally have been a decade free from all of that stuff. I used to suffer like crazy. Here's one thing I notice with my clients who don't have success and who might suffer from the Randle cycle. Again, to me, it's just the basics of energy balance, burning calories, and your macros, protein, fat to carb ratio. The thing about the Randle cycle that I agree with is that for most people, if you have super elevated fat and super elevated carbohydrate intake, it can cause major issues, dysbiosis, digestion issues, weird hormonal stuff, and skin health triggers. Absolutely. And the clients that struggle to heal generally are in a place where they are eating elevated fat and elevated carbs. If you break that apart though, and you take a deeper look at it, it almost is always accompanied by not eating enough protein to buffer those two and not getting enough physical activity to burn the energy sources. When you see those same people elevate their protein to 1 gram per pound of body weight per day on average, naturally the fat grams come down and the carb grams come down because of how satiating the protein is. When your protein's high enough, it's actually, in my opinion, somewhat hard, unless you're drastically overeating, to get enough fat and carbs in the diet to create the Randle cycle. But for those of my clients who have suffered or who have had challenges in getting enough protein, the Randle cycle does come into play. And it usually comes in the form of obvious digestional issues and gut biome issues first. So here's my basic thesis, or summary of the video, if you will. I'm not having any issues with the Randle cycle. One, because there's aspects of the Randle cycle that may just be not real, not true. Meaning, how much fat and how much carbs does it take each individual to create the Randle cycle to begin with? It could be drastically different for each person. And there's a lot of other factors that come into play, like activity level, sleep, stress, and protein amounts. Number two, even if the Randle cycle is absolutely true, in which it might be, it might not be, the theory might be true, might be not true, I'm probably never getting elevated fat and elevated carbs to the point where it would elicit the Randle cycle in my diet ever. Why? Because my protein's super high, and on days that I have carbs, my fat is low, and on days that I have no carbs, my fat is high. So from day to day, damn bugs, from day to day, I'm never really hitting high fat and high carb ever. And even on the days that I'm having carbs, my protein is so elevated that I'm probably not eating enough fat or carbs to elicit that cycle to begin with. But anyway, I just wanted to hit on the subject because there has been a lot of chatter, a lot of comments, a lot of people worrying about my current diet. And I do find it a little funny because not many people who've been triggered by me experimenting and adding carbs for over 2 years to the carnivore diet have asked me or paid attention to, Rob, how are you doing? What are your results looking like? Because if they did, they'd be like, oh, God, he's in the best shape of his life. His health is really good. He does better with his customized diet approach to an animal-based diet than he did on the carnivore diet being very strict, even though the carnivore diet worked great and I really love it. It's funny that those people don't wonder what my data is. Instead, they try to project their triggered emotional state, probably based upon their own lack of results or their own dogma around diet and the things that they believe. So I'll leave you with this. Whether it's the Randle cycle, whether it's the lion diet, the carnivore diet, high fat, high carb, high protein, whatever, find out what works for you through data. Despite what people think or say, each person is different, has different outputs, different stress levels, different activity levels, different amounts of sleep. What works for me perfectly may not work for you. And the amount of carbs that I can take in might not be the same for other people. Don't judge other people's diets based on what you're doing. And also don't try to think that other people's dietary success or diets will reflect what those diets will do for you personally. That's it. Customize your diet based on the foods that actually work for you, based on biomarker data, not dogma. That's my approach with my clients, and that's why we have such great success. That's why I was able to overcome a host of immune health issues, digestion issues, nervous system issues, and skin health issues, because I didn't pay attention to dogma and BS. I tried things out. I tweaked the results. I leveraged my food intake macros and food sources to elicit the health response that was most favorable to me. Also, the basics, man. No diet is really going to be as effective as it could be if you're not sleeping good, if you're not dealing with stress, and you're not getting lots of movement and lots of varied exercise and resistance training modalities. I do lift weights, I do VO2 max training, I do cardio, I play sport, I de-stress, I do light workouts, I do heavy workouts, I undulate them on and off, I do a lot of farm work, I play outside, I get outside, I ground. Your diet and your health is highly affected by many different inputs. And it's good to judge your diet and manage your diet based on all of the inputs, not just the food or a theory like the Randle cycle.